Hey everyone, welcome back to Monitor Comics. In previous episodes, we discussed how to make a one-shot and how your 3 chapters should look if your comic falls under the shonen genre. This video is going to build off some of the ideas mentioned in those videos. If you haven't seen them yet, please be sure to check them out. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about page 1. Ah yes, the page that a customer looks at while they're browsing through their local Barnes & Noble. If you thought your first chapter was important, your very first page is detrimental. Your very first page can be the deciding factor between your reader choosing to read something else or continue your work. I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks to make sure your page 1 is a hit. Or miss. Your first page should evoke an emotion you need to jolt their brain so they are given a reason to continue reading your story. There are many ways to do this. One way could be by briefly explaining your world. Another way could be through shock value. Let's take a look at some legendary first pages in American comics. In this Superman page, we are given the expected backstory of Superman that introduces us to the events to come. This is effective because as a new reader, I would be able to get a grasp for what is capable in this story. In this case, we see planets being destroyed, and I get to see the origins of one of America's most famous heroes. In this first page of Y, The Last Man, the artist uses shock value to throw us right into the world. As a new reader, we're thrown right in as the apocalypse is beginning. We assume our protagonist is this hysterical woman covered in blood, but we are quickly corrected when a level-headed cop cuts her off mid-sentence. Our expectations are then shattered again as she kills herself. This chaos is disorienting for a first-time reader and makes them interested in why all of the men in the world suddenly disappeared and died. In this page from Spider-Man, we get a different approach. Instead of a quick rundown of an origin story or creating shock value, we get a mixture of both. During the time that this Spider-Man issue was published, it was unheard of for comics to display such blatant teasing to this degree. Bullying was never portrayed in this way. This was shocking to readers. It also served as an indicator that this first chapter was the origin story. The fusion of the two methods created an effective first page. Next, let's take a look at a few mangas. In this opening page from Death Note, we get a juxtaposition of a bored Light Yagami wishing something interesting would happen. This page is effective because we see an Angel of Death paralleling Light's boredom. Thus, the story hints at something chaotic taking place relatively soon. Why else would you show a normal human in one scene and a god of death in the next? In this first page of Attack on Titan, we see a trick known as the page turner. Basically, the artist uses shock value mixed with suspense, and it creates a feeling that we have to turn the page to see what happens next. We see a giant wall, and we wonder why these children are behind a giant wall in this village. And we see a giant bigger than the giant wall looking over it, so we want to know what's going on. Next, let's take a look at some shonen manga. In the first page of Haikyuu, we are given an introduction to the sport of volleyball. We are also given a brief introduction to our protagonist, a short player in a tall man's game. I wouldn't necessarily call this the most efficient first page for a sports manga, but it's decent enough to get a new reader interested in this underdog character. Funny enough, if we take a look at the first page of Kuroko's basketball, we see a similar introduction with the top basketball team being introduced, and then we are told about a mysterious player on the team who would eventually become our protagonist. It might be a recent sports genre thing to start your story off as more of an introduction to the sport instead of trying to cause shock value, but I don't really know where I stand on that topic. Let's take a look at some older works, starting with another sports manga, Hajime no Ippo, or Fighting Spirit. Unlike the newer sports manga we looked at before this, Ippo begins with a normal school day in the life of an awkward kid named Ippo. We are shown that he is shy and timid, and he doesn't fit in with his class. This may not be the best opening scene, because it seems like a slice of life and we don't know what sport this book is going to be about. But Hajime no Ippo is one of the greatest things to ever exist, so shut up! Similarly, in Slam Dunk, the manga begins with the character being rejected by his crush. This gives a glimpse into this character's personal life, and it resembles a slice of life like I mentioned in Hajime no Ippo. And it also hints at the team of basketball showing up later, because the crush rejects him, saying she likes the guy on the basketball team. Personally, I like the introductory explanation first pages better, like they used in Haikyuu and Kuroko's basketball, because it kind of gives the reader a sense of what they're getting into. Slam Dunk and Hajime no Ippo are infinitely better in the long run, but The newer works have a better way of grabbing new readers. Now let's take a look at some adult manga. Starting with the genius work, Oyasumi Punpun, or Goodnight Punpun. We see a mix of hyperrealism. I think the artist used actual photography for the backgrounds, and extreme cartooniness, with the main character Punpun looking like a bird that a child drew. The dialogue is pretty shocking too, because the popular girl in the school is described as pretty, but we're looking at her and she looks like something you see out of a Junji Ito manga. All in all, this page was super effective in grabbing the reader's attention because, come on,
what the hell is that?
in the first page of Berserk, the shock value is used once again. We see our protagonist, Guts, engaging in the dirty,
Getting in those guts.
and the girl he's sleeping with turns into a lizard boyo. It's been a while since that happened to me, so as a first time reader, that hit a little bit different. The page could have had a more dramatic layout, because right now each panel looks like it fit on an average page. But this page is effective in grabbing the reader's attention because, like the previous example,
What the shit is that?
finally, I want to take a quick look at some shoujo manga to see if they use any similar techniques for their first pages. In this page of Shugochara, we are given the beginning of an origin story with our protagonist standing up for a kid getting bullied. This works because we are shown a tomboyish girl, but for the first page, it feels a little melodramatic. In my opinion, like I said before, if I was reading this page for the first time at Barnes & Noble, I'd probably have to read a few more pages to decide if I want to actually read this book or not.
And let me tell you, this book is the shit.
But I wouldn't know that from first glance. In this page at Kimi ni Todoke, we see the shock value being used once again. Our protagonist is described as an innocent girl wanting to do a good deed every day, but she's shown artistically as this ghoul-looking girl, and she looks just like the girl from Ring, and they call her the girl from Ring. They call her Sadako. For a romance manga, this was very effective because who does that in a romance manga? If pages look all flowery and pretty, why would you show a girl who looks horrendous and like a monster? And like I said before,
What the shit is that?
so let's run it back. Your first page matters because it is your very first impression to your reader. This is your one shot to hook them right away. One way to grab your reader's attention is by quickly introducing your world through a brief introduction. While this may be wordy, it'll tell your reader what they're signing up for. The opposite route is to grab them with shock value. If you can elicit an emotion out of them that they didn't expect to express, then you successfully gauge their interest. That's about gonna do it for this video. I know it was a little shorter than usual, but I hope you learned something new. If you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any more juicy content. Drop a comment down below on what video you'd like to see next. As always, you can find the links to all of my social media accounts down in the description below. Please check out all of my previous videos where I go over tons of other comic making tips and tricks. Thank you guys for checking out this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.